That. Right, hi, and welcome to the latest edition of a Moretti and a Catch-Up. This week, it's a Moretti and a Leeds Pale Ale, and it's with the one and only Martin Willock from Inquest, and it's all about insolvency. So welcome to the event, Martin, and thank you so much for giving up your valuable time. Have you got your drink?
I have. Thank you.
Yeah, very good, very good. Looks a bit dark for a pale ale.
Yeah, it's a Lancaster bomber, I'm afraid.
Ah, right. So you've just gone and run up, throw me branding all out the window. Brilliant. Thanks for that. Great start. This is going to go well.
Yeah.
So obviously, you're in insolvency, and I brought you on today to have a chat with it because I think, following the COVID pandemic, this is something that I think is on thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of business owners' minds about the fear of insolvency because of the huge global impact that it's had and the massive impact it's had on the economy. So I thought it was quite I can't think of the word that I'm thinking of, to be honest. It was an appropriate thing for us to be talking about because there'll be a lot of people watching this who are worried or a little bit nervous about the long-term future of the business. So obviously we've worked together for a long, long time. We've been friends as well for a long, long time. And the reason why I asked you is because you're the only person that I trust with any of our clients to do any insolvency for us. So I thought it would be great to get your expertise on this matter. So just to give us a bit of background about you, and you're smirking, because I can imagine why. just to get a little bit of background about you, can you tell us why you got into insolvency?
Oh, going back 25 years now when I'd hair.
I know I had the picture, but I couldn't get it online. I've been desperately trying to work out how to flash something on the screen of you from 25 years ago, but I'm sure I'll post it in a WhatsApp group or something somewhere. But carry on, sorry.
Yeah, so after leaving university, went for a job interview with a company called BDO Binder Hamlin, which was BDO back in the day. And yeah, I got offered a job in as a trainee insolvency administrator. Working for BDO. Been in the industry ever since, really. Trained at Grant Thornton and Baker Tilly, and ever since then I've worked for smaller firms. And now I'm with an excellent firm over in Bury, Inquest Corporate Recovery.
Yeah, and you head up the Leeds office, don't you?
Yeah, so I advise companies pretty much east of the Pennines. We do insolvency. We're a boutique firm, a small boutique firm. In primarily insolvency and forensic accounting. So we've got a forensic accounting team, and they do a lot of expert witness stuff in criminal proceedings and matrimonial stuff. So yeah, it's a great team and yeah, a great company to work for.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. So you've been in the industry 25 years. Now, that's a long time to be. I mean, obviously you look that old, but for you to be able to keep a job for 25 years amazes me. But but no, it's obviously something that you enjoy doing. What is it that you like most about working within the insolvency environment? And it's not just the socializing, which I know you do a lot of.
It's just very varied, every client that you speak to or every company that you advise is different. So it's very varied. You're not doing the same thing day in, day out as you are in some careers, if you like. So yeah, it's just audit, yeah. But it's just very varied, and every situation that you find yourself in is different.
Yeah. So no, and like I say, the things you can do and help businesses achieve with businesses and business owners that are genuinely in trouble are quite phenomenal, really. Where if it'd been left to their own devices or left to the creditors' side of things to deal with things, the outcomes would be much different, wouldn't they? So I know you put that in, but we'll touch a little bit on that later. So okay, then. So pre sort of COVID, so pre lockdown, how was the insolvency world functioning? What was going on in it?
Yeah, I mean, it's busy. It was quite busy up until basically government intervention. We were ticking along nicely. The usual economic landscape, if you like, and then suddenly, bang! COVID hit us in March, if you like, and lockdown, and and it's been a bit of a tidal wave. And I think a lot of people are still in shock by it, really. So,
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, in the early stages of COVID in lockdown, I think what you found, like exactly that, people were in shock and didn't really know what to expect. Then came a kind of stage of sort of acceptance of this is where we are. We've got to make the best of the situation. And I think, you know, we've got huge amounts of government support in there. And I want to come back to the government support, actually, because I think there's a bit of a risk in there for business owners. But yeah, there was massive support. And now, you know, with lockdown starting to ease, I think people are starting to look to go back to work. We've already seen sorts of mass redundancy waves. LinkedIn's littered with people looking for work and things like that, and companies being forced to close the doors as a result of the withdrawal of the job retention scheme and the support, the furlough, which is fully understandable. It couldn't go on forever. I think it was costing about 9 billion, wasn't it? So, you know, that's quite a lot of money for a government to fund out every single month. So yeah, I think you're right in terms of things. Now people are starting to think about things, which makes this an appropriate time for us to be having these sorts of conversations. So how has COVID, do you think, affected businesses from a point of view in terms of insolvency?
Well, I mean, depending on which industry you're in, but I mean, you know, if you're in the service industry, say restaurants and bars, you know, it's absolutely decimated them, you know, immediately. So depending on which, some sectors are doing well, you know, like if you're in healthcare or, you know, that sort of industry, you know, they're booming, you know, pharma companies are booming. But a lot of companies, I think, are now looking at how they're going to get back to work, and you know, what is going to be on the other side of this, really, because nobody really knows, you know. There's a lot of uncertainty out there at the moment, and you know, companies need to, you know, take some really drastic steps, I think, to you know, to move forward.
Yeah. Now, obviously, one of the things the government's done is put in place is the CBILS sort of loan schemes, and then the much more simple one to get through, the bounce back loans. Mm-hmm. Do you have any concerns about the bounce back loans and people just taking out 50 grand loans left, right, and centre?
I've heard some horror stories, I must admit. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's a loan, and it's there for a purpose, and, you know, it needs to be used for the purpose that it's meant for. I've seen some commentary recently that HMRC will, you know, prosecute people that have misused it. You know, there's going to be tax implications for people that have misused it as well. So, you know, as long as it's used for the, you know, for the purpose that it was meant for, you know, I think it's a great thing. You know, I mean, who wouldn't want a loan at those terms? You know. Absolutely.
And we've got on record before encouraging people to take the bounce back loans as long as it's used in the right way. We warned quite heavily about the risk insolvency and the impacts of the insolvency. So how do you think the government would pursue anybody who was sort of deemed to have misused it? Because, you know, some people are just saying, well, I'll take it out and pop the company. Which makes my ears bleed, if I'm completely honest, when I hear that.
Yeah, I won't tell you what some of the things that I've heard as well, but I don't know. I mean, HMRC, I've seen commentary recently that HMRC have said that they will, you know, prosecute individuals of companies.
So this is lifting the veil of incorporation and going after the directors.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's the commentary that I've seen. I think there's still a bit to come out of that yet. I think last week we saw, or earlier this week, we saw the first arrest of company directors who abused the furlough scheme.
Yeah, didn't he do about 600 grand in the West Midlands or something like that?
Yeah, it's a decent number. Yeah. So I think I'm sure there will be similar on the bounce back as well.
In truth, I've got no issue with that because, you know, at the end of the day, the state stepped in to support businesses, and those people that are going to be unscrupulous and take advantage of it, I think should be prosecuted. And I think it's actually a very clever thing that the government are doing, because if you remember when they first came into power, they talked about clamping down on people that had underpaid taxes and people that had avoided taxes. And of course, it's much easier to go after people, the smaller business, than it is for the big corporates in Starbucks. So again, he's now got the HMRC have now got the carte blanche to go after anybody under the sort of cover or mask of, well, you might have defrauded the state when realistically you were on the radar to be attacked anyway, and the man in the street. So I think it's been it works quite well to HMRC's advantage. So, but yeah, it's an interesting time from that point of view. So, I mean, there's lots of big names that are also going, aren't they, in terms of the high street and things like that. What's your views on those sorts of things?
Well, I mean, immediately on lockdown and when the government intervention scheme came out, we saw, some huge companies taking huge loans, car manufacturers, airlines, and then last few weeks we've seen we've seen quite a lot of high profile insolvencies, pretty much daily last week. I had somebody text me to say, Martin, which company do you think it'll be tomorrow? And it's got to a point where, there's some big names falling over, and it has a domino effect, so everything, there's a supply chain there, and it has a domino effect. So I don't think anybody's immune to where we're at right now. There's things that people can put in place, which we'll come on to, but I really don't think anybody's immune to, to having difficulties right now.
Well, you've seen football clubs go at you. I mean, was it Wigan Athletic that went into administration last week? From my point of view, that I've got mixed feelings about this because my friend's assistant manager at Wigan and is doing a marvellous job. But with Wigan's 12-point deduction, Hull might just stay in the Championship. So I'm not quite sure where I really want to sit, to be honest. I'm pretty sure he won't be watching this. I'm going to say I hope he gets his 12 points deduction and Hull stay up. But
they're from bottom, are they? They're third from bottom.
We're third from bottom on goal difference. Yeah. We're horrific.
Leeds are going to win the Championship, I'm sure.
I'm pretty certain that's two, which kind of is a double blow for me. You guys win the Championship and we get relegated all in one season. It's not a great year to be a Hull fan, if I'm completely honest. Mind you, I don't think there is a good year to be a Hull fan, but yeah. But no, so I mean, if you can see multi-million-pound corporations like Wigan Athletic go into that with massive turnovers and things like that, then like you say, I don't think anybody's renewed. So what's your thoughts? Have you got a forecast for a global recession?
I'm not an economist, but I don't think it takes a genius to say that yes, we are in for a recession. Probably a global recession. But I think the question remains is just how deep that recession is going to be.
We had Lee Clayton on before, didn't we, and talked about the peaks and troughs of the investment markets and things like that. And there was a big hit to start with, and it's just started to bounce back now. I think they've recovered a lot of the losses. Well, I mean, this was a few weeks ago, but the
stock market. If you look at the stock market, I think the stock market's it's not doing badly. But I just don't think that reflects, where we are really in terms of, the economic outlook that we've got right now.
No, and it's a frightening place. And like you say, business owners really, really do need to have a real grip on where they are and put some contingency plans in place. Last week we spoke with Colin Hewitt from Float, and one of the things he talked about was having the scenario plannings on your cash flows to understand what's going on, what's coming up, what's likely to happen, and those sorts of things. So, real-time information, it was vital on that. So, okay, so we're approaching this sort of thing. This gets watched by quite a few people. So, and without doubt, there'll be some people sat there considering this or being concerned about this. What's your advice for those people that are sat there right now?
Well, I think the advice for companies that are wondering how to get back to businesses need to be clever. I think right now, businesses need to adapt. You've got to adapt to where we're at. Things are not going to be the same. You've got to think a little bit outside the box. A couple of really good examples where we saw recently the restaurants doing home delivery services. So they immediately kicked in to do home deliveries. They needed to do that, and you know what? It was fantastic. I live in Chapel Allerton, which is just not in North Leeds. And we've got an Italian restaurant in Chapel Allerton that actually started renting out electric bikes, when the shops could reopen. They actually went into a completely different, completely different route just for a short period of time. But, they will have been they were renting the bikes out all the time. Yeah. But, I think you've got to adapt. The point I'm making is you've got to adapt. You've got to, if you're selling business to consumer, I think you need to be online. I think, if you're not online, then, you've got to look at getting online. So you've got to look at what suits you, but you've got to think smart. I think the second piece of advice, as you've just touched on, is you have to know your numbers. It's more important now than it ever has been. You've got to have a forecast which is, if you say, up to date. You need to know what your break-even point is. You need to know where your pinch points are in your cash flow, and you need to identify what overheads, if any, need to be cut. Where the funding requirements are within your cash flow.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I think now more than ever, it's pivotal that people understand what exactly the future looks like, and the only way you can do that with any real certainty is to have up-to-date information, have up-to-date forecasts, almost to the day where it's going through. And I think historically a lot of businesses, and rightly or wrongly, I've got enough money in the bank. I know where I'm going to be. I've got a rough ballpark figure what's going to go on, because I know what my business is like. I know I'm going to be busy in August. I know I'm going to be quiet in September. But right now, with that inside knowledge, that I know my industry has come completely out the window, because literally nobody knows anything that's going to happen right now. That everything's changing by the day. Look at the announcements that came out last week about this week about the changes in the VAT and all those sorts of things. All those things have got to be adapted to. There's so many business decisions that people have got to make those decisions. So that's good. That's good. So
one other thing before we move on. I think communication as well is key. You've got to communicate. Good businesses are good communicators. They have to communicate with all stakeholders, being your employees, your lenders, HMRC, your landlords, your customers. You've got to be speaking to your customers, because you've got to understand and know what position they're in as well.
Yeah, it's not just an upward trail, is it, about who you are? It's about making sure that you understand your sale and your forecast. And again, I think, like you say, managing stakeholders is vital.
It is, yeah. And you've got to communicate well.
Yeah, because I think people are aware. One of the big things, I think there's it's a bit British, isn't it? We don't like talking about money. We don't like to admit that times are hard and things are difficult. So what a lot of people do will avoid the situation. But I think, in my experience, and we've dealt with this a lot with you guys, when you've sat down and talked to people, they're all right about it because they know what's going on. I think the biggest frustration from a debtor point of view is just not being able to understand what the situation is really.
Yeah, I mean, look, COVID is a big leveler on that really, because we're all in it together, as you put on your hashtag. It's very apt hashtag really. We are all in it together, and all companies will be affected one way or another. Obviously, a lot of companies will survive, and that's great. And it'll take time, but a lot of companies will be affected negatively by this. So taking a bit of advice, it's no bad thing. Let's be honest. What's the downside of taking advice? Nothing really. It's a win-win situation, isn't it?
So do you want to talk then realistically about, obviously we view it extensively across the years, but do you want to talk to people so they're aware of the process of how all things kind of operate in this? So someone sat there a little bit worried about certain things and they're taking your advice, that they're going to come for some advice. How does the process sort of pan out? What's the first stage?
Okay, well, the first stage, basically, pick up the phone and ring me. As you know, my phone's on 24/7. We're getting a lot of calls at the moment from companies seeking advice, and we're always willing to sit down with anybody. Even where there's no way we're going to get paid, if you like, at the end of it. We don't mind that. We do a lot of our work for free. I'm happy to sit and advise anybody. And if that has to be done over a Zoom call now, then that's fine. I'll spend as much time or as little time as needed, really.
Well, we've had conversations with businesses that you and I both thought these guys have got one chance to get out now, and it's now.
Yep.
and have turned it round and gone on to survive and thrive and really be successful and things like that. So there's no harm in having the conversation. And I think, do you want to talk to me? Obviously, there's two opportunities when it comes to sort of insolvency. Either you push the button on the insolvency and control the situation, or somebody else will. And obviously, if we push the button as clients and things like that of yours, do you want to talk about how you work with the client in that sort of situation there?
Yeah. So if we're advising a client, the first thing that we'll do, if you like, is speak to the major stakeholders in the business, the major creditors, so that they're actually aware that the company's taking advice. Because, as it's going back to communication. If you communicate with your creditors, they generally will allow you, more time and flexibility, especially with the current landscape that we're in. They will generally let you have more time to sort your stuff out.
Yeah.
So what we do at Inquest is we hold their hand. So I think that's really what I like to think is I'm very sympathetic to a situation, and I'll hold the director's hand if that's what's needed, so that they are fully aware at every stage of the process of what's actually happening. So there's no surprises. They anticipate what's going to happen. They know what's going to happen, and there's no surprises. And they also need to understand what the implications are as well. Because a lot of directors, when companies go into an insolvency process, they might have personal guarantees. So they need to understand what the implications of that is as well. So I generally like to think that when I help somebody, they know what's happening and there's no surprises.
Yeah, so understanding the complete view, not just that of the company, the holistic, taking the business owner into account, is really a pivotal part of the things that you do there. And I think that's one of the things that I think people worry about. And one of the big things, one of the barriers that I've come up against when I've been talking to people about insolvency is this perception about insolvency. It's this perception of a fear of failure, admitting that actually the business has gone wrong, and that it's how would you deal with that sort of view of things, really? Because there's other areas as well. There's reputational risk. People are petrified that if they're going to liquidation, or they're going into administration or anything like that, that all the suppliers will walk away from, all the customers will walk away from them. And then of course then they start to worry about, can I ever be a director of a company again? Will I ever be able to get a mortgage? How will I survive? How will I hold my head up high? How do you deal with this massively negative perception of insolvency? Because let's be honest, you're not particularly popular guys on either stretch of the sort of thing, eh? I enjoy a beer with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right. I mean, everybody's got a negative, in that sense. People do worry. I've never dealt with a client that's not been happy with the end result at the end of the day. Generally, we will never push somebody down a route that they don't want to go down. We can give them the advice, but ultimately they need to make the decision that it's the right route for them to go down. And ultimately, it's about getting the right advice. If you give, every bit of advice is tailored to a specific situation. So every situation is different. But no, I mean, look, generally, I think when companies do come out the other side, there's a feeling of relief, if you like, that they've not got the stresses that they had previously. And you'd be surprised how many suppliers, if you like, have companies insured. And yes, some suppliers might not want to deal with that company again, with the same director going forward. But I think a lot of suppliers do. You know what? Like we said earlier, COVID is a big leveler. So I think the stigma of insolvency where we are right now has definitely gone away.
And it needs to as well, because if you look at all the all the big businesses, all the successful business owners, they've all had businesses that have gone bust.
Yeah.
You look at all the, just thinking, I don't know what I thought of there. I thought like maybe Jamie Oliver, multi-millionaire, popped a company. You know,
Yeah, Richard Branson's had a few, I think.
Richard Branson's had a few. Peter Jones has had multiple. They've all done it, and I think it's that. I think what helps them be successful is that actually knowing, you know what, I've done everything I can. My dog's barking now. I do apologise. I've done everything I can. It's time to pull the plug, and I've just got to, you know, I owe it to the suppliers, I owe it to the team, I owe it to my customers not to make this any worse for them. So I think that's quite important. You know, the other thing that I hear a lot is, well, I'll never be able to get a mortgage again. So if we liquidate a company, does that mean that a client, the individual, can never get a mortgage again?
No.
Does it mean that they can never run a company again?
No.
No, obviously, if there's things that run toward and it gets unlifted, then absolutely. But, you know, if the company just goes bust with all good intentions in the world,
no, it doesn't. It doesn't affect your personal credit. You know, it doesn't stop you from being a director again. You know, it's part of being an entrepreneur. You know, you can't be successful all the time. You know, you're going to have failures, as we've just suggested with Richard Branson and Peter Jones and the like. So no, I mean, you know, there is that negativity, but you know, it's just misinformation, and people just need educating. But I think the key is really is taking advice really early. You know, so even, you know, if you've got clients right now that think they'll be okay, there's no harm in sitting down with somebody to take advice.
No,
you know, because you know what harm can it do? You know, in every meeting that you have with a professional, you're gonna pick up some really nice bits of information, and that'll be useful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think people will be surprised when if they knew how many people in their actual professional networks had gone bust that they don't know about. You know, it's I won't say it's frightening, but what I'm saying is it's not something that gets painted on the front of your house. You know, it's not something that tattoos to your phone. It's not broadcast on the news. No, but it's not broadcasting on the evening news and stuff like that. So you know, so that actual reputational damage is not anywhere near as much as it's built up to be in people's minds.
Not at all. No, not at all. It used to get advertised in the newspaper, but that was done away with many years ago.
Yeah. So basically, for people that are a little bit scared of having these conversations, and I think this is one of the biggest barriers for people, this is perception, reputational risk. Not everybody needs to know. It's not the end of the world. Not everybody will find out, and even if they do, nobody really cares. It won't stop you from getting a mortgage, assuming you've acted properly and decently in the future, and you're not personally guaranteed up to the whole where you have to go into personal bankruptcies. That's a different issue, and it won't stop you from starting again in the new company, which we've seen. I mean, we've seen that with was it Go Outdoor?
Go Outdoor.
Just went bust the next day. JD Sports Holdings or Enterprises or whatever it is pre-packed it and started again the very next day.
Yeah, so I mean that's a pre-pack administration where the administrator will, if you like, be appointed. But what they've done previous to that is they've done a lot of work in the background, advertising the business for sale. So I don't know the details behind that particular case, but yeah, the administrator will have advertised that business for sale. And you know, at the end of the day, if it was, you say it was JD Sports, yeah, JD Sports.
I think it was. Go Outdoor, whoever the main owner of Go Outdoor was, had formed a new company the same day it went book, and he got bought out the next day. You know,
yeah, that's one thing that is if you like frowned upon, you know, by suppliers and creditors. But at the end of the day,
it could be that JD Sports was the biggest creditor, and they decided to write that debt off. Yeah,
it could be that JD Sports was the biggest creditor.
Yeah, so again, there's all sorts of things. You get things. I saw a lot when it blew up. There was a lot on LinkedIn about how it was the rich getting richer and they're just walking away from debts. But again, that's just speculation from the outside. That's not actually seeing what the full level of detail is. There could be many, many underlying things that we will never know because we're not privy to that information.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, look, you know, I don't know the details about that particular case, but you know, we do pre-pack administrations. It's a very useful. It's a very
business at the end of the day.
It is. I mean, it's very useful because what it does is it conserves jobs, it saves jobs, And as an insolvency practitioner, that is key. That is what we always look to do. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, really. So we look to see where we can save jobs.
And I think that's an important point that I've never really looked at it that way. But if you think about it, if there's a company with 10, 15 employees and it takes HMRC for 60 grand's worth of VAT or PAYE or corp tax or whatever it is, but those 10 employees white knight into a new company and it starts again, that's 10, 15 employees that are not on benefits, the people that are not struggling, and they're still people that are paying into the economy and stuff like that. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not disastrous from the revenue, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not all about the revenue. Every creditor is equal. So that's how they're treated. Every creditor is equal. But at the end of the day, the administration process is very useful for saving jobs. It's used where there's a viable business to sell. And the business is sold along with the employees, and they're transferred across to the new company. Saving jobs, and ultimately that is one of the aims, of doing the administration.
No, absolutely. So we've kind of touched on COVID, the effects of that, the change that you've given a little bit of advice about what companies should be thinking about. We've touched on the perception. We've touched on the process. Suppose the only biggest thing we haven't talked about is this ethos that cash is king. Where do you sit on this?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was in one of the tips that I was going to give to business owners. It's all right being solvent on a balance sheet, but there's two tests to insolvency, and one of them's cash flow basis. So it's all right having a massive debtor book, but ultimately you need those debtors to pay. It's really important for directors to get on top of their credit control and collect that money in.
Absolutely. It's fundamental. And you guys, you've got good contacts with people that can support in that, where businesses are struggling to do that on an internal process, haven't you? Yeah,
insolvency practitioners are pretty well connected people. We know funders, we know debt collectors, we know lawyers, we know corporate finance guys. So, any support that a business needs, if you like, from the financial side of it or the legal side of it, we can help.
Which is really, really important. And I don't think people realize that comes in as part of the support that you guys are there with in terms of insolvency, that actually you can help with the restructuring. You're not just the Grim Reaper, are you? You're the one that you might look like him after a few beers, but you are there to help restructure businesses as well and make them come out the other end. So there can be refinancing of debts, there can be entering into negotiations with creditors, and all those sorts of things which you guys can do as well. So it's not just a case of just shutting the doors. So
yeah,
no, that's great. That's great. So I'm kind of coming to the end of where I'm at now. Is there anything else that you want to partake your wisdom on the rest of the team before I ask you what your biggest piece of advice is, or a couple of pieces of advice as a wrap up?
Not really. I think I've covered everything that I was planning on chatting about. So it's been nice to speak to you. Yeah.
And you. So thank you so much. So just in closing, then, what is your biggest piece of advice? What was the thing, if they had to take one out? All right, I'll allow you two if you need to, because I know there's a few key things in there for you. What would the advice that you would give people right now who are sat on the edge, who are not sleeping on a night, who are scared about what's going to happen, who are petrified about COVID and the effects on their business? What would you say to them right now?
Pick up the phone and ring me, and we'll have a chat. But ultimately, it's communication. You've got to communicate. I like to think that I'm an easy guy to sit down and chat to. So I will sit and chat to anybody, advise anybody. So yeah, pick up the phone. But communicate with your stakeholders as well. Communicate with your lenders, communicate with HMRC, your creditors, and
you've got to control the situation, haven't you?
You do, yeah. You do, yeah.
There's no point letting somebody else wrap this up, who will have a more aggressive, a liquidator with a different agenda. to resolve the situation, as opposed to one that is going to work alongside them to support the long-term outcome. So I think you bang right there. I think it is communication, and we'll if anybody wants your details, we have them. Just pick up the phone, give me a shout, and we can put those in. We can be in those meetings. We're often sat in those meetings as a little go-between to set the sort of precedent of where it's all at, to explain the financials and things like that. And again, we do that absolutely free of charge, like I say, to work with you about the long-term survival of the business. So realistically, that's fantastic, Martin. Thank you so much. All that's really left for me to do is to thank you for your time this afternoon. I know I'm impacting on you getting to the pub to celebrate Leeds United's fantastic victory last night. I say through gritted teeth. Pains me to say how good they did play last night and how impressed I was with them. Yeah. So there you go. A little bit of a little bit gracious there. So that's it from us this week. Next week, we Martin touched on cash flow and the importance of it, and then particularly in debt collection. So what we've managed to be able to do is to get the CEO of Chaser to come online with us. So we've got David Tuck joining us next week to talk about wartime, almost how he phrased it, wartime credit control and the importance of it. So really looking forward to that next week. Once again, Martin, thank you so much for your time. We've had a few old faces have joined the show today. We've got James Bicknell, Mark Kraft, a couple of other people, the old B&I scene. So there's a few names. I expected a little bit more abuse off them, if I'm completely honest. I'm a little bit disappointed in them, but there we go. But it's all good. So thanks so much for your time, mate. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much. Cheers.